Coach Cody.
Fire away.
So, I guess halfway, almost through spring practice, I guess what stands out the most to you, development-wise?
Yeah, well, we're certainly better than we were when we started. The kids have had a great attitude. Coaching staff's excellent. You know, Coach Fitz has put together a tremendous staff. We're working hard to get better each and every day. So there's lots of work to be done. They're learning every single day. There's new techniques, schematics, you know, every day that we go out there. And kids are working really hard. So we have a long way to go, but we're better now than we were when we started spring ball.
Logical question, how does the hat and the color scheme fit you right now? And just the decision to come to Michigan State for you, what went into that?
Yeah, it was an easy one. Certainly there's history here with my dad coaching here when I was a kid. And so I was very familiar. Just the community, the school, the history, the tradition. You know, I've told a lot of people that, you know, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, you know, Bill Burke, Chris Baker, Plexico Burris, Gary Scott, Amp Campbell, Sori Canoe. I mean, I remember all these guys. These were really, you know, my heroes. These guys were giants to me. TJ Turner, Josh Thornhill, I could go on. And so this was an easy decision. It was an opportunity for me to come home. My wife's from 20 minutes down the road. My mom lives and my dad live an hour and a half from here. And, you know, when I was kind of growing up in college and after college, I looked up to Pat Fitzgerald. You know, that was really just someone that I tried to emulate, someone I wanted to be like. And so this was a very easy decision for me, one I'm extremely grateful and appreciative of, and have a lot of familiarity with the school, the history, the tradition.
The program itself, that continuity is something that when you have a coaching change, it isn't usually there. Knowing the past and knowing the history, how has that maybe influenced what you've been able to do?
Yeah, I think in just expressing to recruits and families the expectations here for winning, you know, and for playing football at an extremely high level. This is an incredibly proud program that has great history, great tradition, and I didn't need to be educated on that. You know, I was very well aware of it, and I've seen it firsthand. You know, when my dad was here and the seasons that they had and the staff and the coaches and, you know, my dad and Coach D'Antonio were assistant coaches together, you know, and so I'm very familiar with it, and I think in communicating with recruits and families of, you know, where we're headed and what this place stands for and what the expectations are here. Like I said, I didn't need to be educated on it. I was very familiar with it, and it was a very easy decision for, you know, my wife, my family, and I, and I'm thrilled to be here. You know, I'm beyond blessed and fortunate to be here.
Can you walk us through sort of a high-level overview of your offensive philosophy and coach philosophy as part of that as well?
Yeah, I think offensively, you know, we tell a lot of people we're an attacking, answer-based offense that features its playmakers. And so there's a lot of layers to that. And the acronym we use on how we want to play, we say we want to play fast, fundamentally sound, attacking, smart, and tough. And so we kind of combine those things. Like I said, there's a lot of layers to that. Attacking in nature, you know, the way that we play, the decisions that we make, the schemes that we implement. We want to provide answers for the players, you know, whether it be, you know, answers to front structures, coverage structures, or personnel, you know, players where, you know, there's a great player one way, there's weaknesses the other. We want to make sure that we give our players answers. And then we want to feature our playmakers. We want to put our players in the best position to be successful. And that includes, that includes everybody. Wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, certainly the offensive line. We've had great success in this offense doing that and utilizing people in a lot of different ways at all positions. And so we're in the infant stages of finding out what our players do well. You know, and that's really what spring ball is for, to establish a style of play, the way that we want to play, the effort and toughness and discipline that we want to play with, but also trying to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the players so that we can expand on those things after spring, into the summer, and certainly into the fall.
Nick, I asked Pat if he'd ever coached against you in your playing days, and he told me to bring up Corey Wooten to you.
Yeah.
Can you fill in the blanks there, I guess?
Corey hit me pretty hard, and I fumbled the ball. That's probably the long and short of it. Corey was a great player. Thanks for asking. Yeah, that's probably, yeah, that's the long and short answer of it. But, you know, I think you know, as a coach, it's your job to try to educate the players on any experience that you've had. And some of my, you know, errors or mistakes as a player, if you share those stories with the guys to just get them to learn and do things better. Don't pull up on a sprint out. That's basically it.
Did you have a relationship with him before he calls you for this job?
Coach Fitz?
Kind of more of a,
honestly, and I still have the note, you know, it was really one of admiration on my end. You know, I would, when I was a young coach and I was a graduate assistant, I wrote him wishing him luck and, you know, having him keep me in mind if he had any graduate assistant positions open in the future. And he wrote me back, you know, and so I still have that note, you know, and that was really the extent of it. There were some common people that we, you know, that I had either coached. You know, some of my former player, Peyton Ramsey, was a player that I had coached at Indiana, and he played for Fitz at Northwestern after Peyton graduated from IU. So there was common there. Mike Bajakian, IGA for Jake, and he obviously had coached for Fitz. So there were some common people that we knew, but no, I had not. I don't even know if I had met him in person. It was really just, you know, whether it was a note or just, you know, common people that we knew. Certainly I was well aware of him and his reputation and the success that he's had. And so that was really the extent of it.
When did you write that? Sorry, just to clarify the detail.
Oh, geez, probably 2010 or 11, yeah, when I was just getting into coaching, you know, and I could say I wrote a lot of notes, you know, that's what young people do, you know, as you're trying to just establish yourself in whatever career and profession that you choose to do. I'm sure many of you have similar stories about trying to reach out to people. And I wrote a lot of notes, and I can promise you I didn't get a ton that wrote back, you know, and so I thought that spoke a ton about who he is. And no surprise, and it was not a surprise. And I wasn't expecting it, but that just speaks to who he is and the type of person he is. His love for football and coaches, you know, and he recognized a young coach that was, you know, just eager to learn and try to get better and network. And yeah, he was gracious enough to write me back.
Nick, I think it's 16 jobs for your dad from Royal Oak Shrine to the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Schools and franchises.
Yeah.
Halfway there.
Yeah.
When did you know that you wanted to be a coach and when you had it?
Well, certainly my dad's my hero, you know, and so I would say probably 8th grade, 9th grade. I mean, you know, we all have dreams of playing as long as possible, you know, and I probably recognized when I was real young that maybe that wasn't going to happen after whatever, you know, high school or college. And so I knew from a pretty early age I was going to be a coach. Like I said, my dad was my hero, still is. And, you know, the guys that I admired player-wise, he coached them. You know, he got to yell and hoot and holler at them on the field, and so I thought that was pretty cool. But I'm really thankful. You know, my dad's the youngest of 12. My mom's one of 5. You know, our family, you know, football has meant a lot to our family. You know, my younger brother's a coach. We're a football family. And I can't imagine not being a part of a team in some capacity. And so that's why I got into coaching, because I enjoy being a part of a team. And I'm very thankful to be able to do that. And so I was probably pretty young when I knew I was going to get into coaching.
What would you be like without football?
I probably would coach baseball. You know, I probably would coach something else. You know, I had great. You know, my high school baseball coach was a tremendous coach, Coach Tyson. He was a Hall of Fame baseball coach. So I don't know. I just have had great coaches. I would coach and teach. You know, I just I can't imagine doing anything else. You know, so if football wasn't around, I'd figure out lacrosse or basketball or baseball or something. You know, so I just enjoy the interaction with the players. I enjoy the fellowship with the staff. You know, I'm pro coach. You know, I am for coaches. I think it's important. I think young people need coaches and teachers, educators. And so, yeah, I'm lucky. I found something that I really enjoy, you know, and I get up every day fired up to do it.
What's the most important thing you guys will get done this spring?
Well, we kind of have, aside from properly carrying the football, that would be, you know, priority number 1, to make sure that we carry the football the right way. There's 3 main goals that we've kind of talked to the players about, and number 1 was style of play, just the way that we want to play, you know, and so I kind of alluded to that earlier, the toughness that we want to play with, the discipline, the togetherness, you know, and so just the way that we want to play, the effort that we want to play with, that would be priority number 1, and certainly carrying the football properly, that goes into that. You know, we want to do that at a high level. So, but that would be the number 1 thing, just, you know, making sure we establish the standards and expectations of how we want to play. And like I said, there's other layers to that, but that would be certainly at the top.
When you look at the quarterback room that you inherit
Yeah.
and the guys you brought in, I'm wondering how you kind of see everything with Alessio and obviously Cade coming in. And I'm wondering with Cam as well, when you have a left-handed quarterback, and you don't see that very often
Yeah.
anymore. I think Pat
Yeah, Mikey's definitely lefty, yeah.
So I'm wondering how much changes with that and how much having some knowledge of that.
Maybe just, certain plays where you would run them one way or the other. There's certainly certain plays that, you would, favor the quarterback's hand. But other than that, unfortunately, I've had experience coaching left-hander, so it doesn't alter it that much, But all those guys are working hard, and kind of going back to your earlier question, we're just finding out what they do well. What routes do they really throw well? What do they see clearly? It's our job to obviously communicate very clearly to them what we want to get accomplished in each play, each route, each concept. But some guys just see certain routes better, worse. And so we're exposing them to a lot. And then once we get through spring practice, we'll kind of hone in on, hey, they do this best. And each guy could be different. You have to be prepared for whoever's out there in the game to make sure you call the plays that they're good at. That's our job. So
for that position in particular, is it kind of a fire hose approach right now?
that's probably a good way to say it. I guess I haven't, articulated it that way, but you probably have to ask them the pace at which we're moving. We're trying to make sure we prepare them to be ready to go in the fall. And so that's an ongoing process, and it'll continue throughout the fall. We certainly hope our best play of the season is our last play. We want it to, we want to continue to get better as the year goes on, and we want to have that mindset of improving and growing. And so, we're learning every day about them. They're learning about us. And we'll continue to do that to make sure that we have enough volume to get through the calendar year, to play the people we got to play and go against the defenses and the people that we'll go against. You want to make sure that you have enough volume. At the same time, you want to be good at it. So that's constantly, every year, trying to toe that line of having enough but not doing too much to where the execution falls. So, and certainly, like everything, the quarterbacks, what they're capable of doing, that's on the forefront of our mind every day, every second of every day, to try to put them in the best position to be successful.
When you had Milrow 2 years ago and then Ty last
Yeah.
year, does that sort of show, I guess, the flexibility within the system? Two different styles of guys.
Yeah,
That sort of the sort
absolutely.
Of where you go within the
Yeah,
system?
both great players. Obviously here in a few weeks, Ty's going to get drafted, so both NFL quarterbacks. Jay Mill obviously just went in the Super Bowl. So absolutely, different players, but both great in their own way. And we've had success with different types of guys. Obviously, Mike, we coached Josh Dobbs at Tennessee. I mean, these guys were completely different and all great in their own way. And so that's our job. That's what we're charged to do, is find out what they do well and let them do that as many times as possible, and making sure that that menu is big enough to where you're not predictable and people know exactly what you're doing on every situation or every formation. And we want plays that look the same but are different, and so we got to make sure that the guys have enough capability to execute those differences.
I know there's a difference in level, but a guy like Carson Golfer and his skill set and what he can do, all the different positions he's played, what can that do for your offense and playmakers?
Yeah, and not just Carson specifically, but any player. We refer to those guys as positionless players. So guys that are tough to handle. I use the analogy in basketball, like guys that can dribble with both hands, guys that can shoot, guys that can take the ball to the rack. That's what we're looking for in football. So guys that can catch, guys that can block, guys that can run the ball, and the defense has to make a decision on how they're going to try to stop them, and then you do the other thing. And so the more you do well, the harder you are to defend, and that is the case for individual players, and certainly collectively as a unit. And so if you can find players that can do a lot of things well, that they can run routes and catch the ball, you could hand the ball to them in the backfield, they can block. When you find those players, then those guys are tough to handle as a defensive coach, because you don't know how we're going to employ them. So Carson would fall in that category, and there's other guys. So we're trying to expand the skill set of all the players and try to find out what they do great.
Who were the other guys?
Well, we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll let you know. We're at practice 7, so we're trying to figure that out every day. But it's a good question.
Nick, you mentioned writing that note to Fitz. What stood out to you at that point about what he did in his program and things that you said, I'd like to be part of that?
I always thought that he treated people the right way. You could tell that, the people that played for him and coached for him, that they loved and admired him. And I thought he just, had the utmost character and integrity. And that's what I saw when I was a young person. And yeah, I just looked up to him. You know, I thought he was, you know, what you would hope to want to become as a young coach. And so, I mean, we don't have to gas him up too much right now, but I mean, I just looked up to him. Yeah, I was 22 years old, 23 years old, and, you know, he was doing a great job and had the utmost respect for him.
Did you like your dad in any ways in terms of football philosophy?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, both linebackers, you know, Fitz had a little bit more of a, you know, heralded career than my dad at Grand Valley State, but I've seen some pictures of my dad. It looked like he could set the edge. So they love football. They love coaches and teachers. They love being a part of a team. They love every bit of it, you know, and probably above all else, they love to teach, you know, and so that's what I would say about my dad, and incredibly committed and focused to the task at hand, embrace the competition and challenges that come with coaching and competing at this level, and just wake up every single day with a passion to go after it and go get it. And so certainly my dad was that way. My dad's the most disciplined, hardest working person that I know. And so, yeah, I see a lot of similarities in them, but Fitz was a better player. So I'm sure my dad will see this, but that's just what it was, you know.
I was working for Kalen shaped you the last few years.
Yeah, Coach DeBoer, KD and I have a great relationship. You know, obviously we were assistant coaches together. And so I'm very appreciative and thankful to my time with him. I learned a ton. He's a great offensive mind. I would say the biggest thing, aside from the creativity that Kalen possesses, and certainly Ryan Grubb as well, you know, just my time with both of those guys certainly has shaped the way I see the game. And I've had great coaches prior to that as well, but certainly most recently with the success that we've had. But there's simplicity in the creativity, the ability to teach it, the ability for the players to execute it, and the details that go into it that maybe to the, you know, the common person, they wouldn't notice it, you know. And so that's probably the biggest compliment that I could give Kalen and Grubb. But since you asked about Kalen, was just he sees it and he can identify the details and what is important and what is not, and making sure you're teaching the players that. And so I'm very thankful and appreciative of my time with him. And I certainly wouldn't be here as a coach if it weren't for his mentorship and his guidance, you know, in my career. And so, yeah, very thankful for my time with him.
Anything else, Coach Sheridan, last one? Anything?
All good. Thanks, guys. Yep, thank you.